Have you ever heard of the Great Galveston Hurricane of 1900? It was a storm of almost unimaginable fury, a monster that slammed into the Texas coast and became one of the deadliest natural disasters in American history. In a single day, it wiped out a huge portion of the city and claimed thousands of lives. It's a story of immense tragedy, but hidden within it is a remarkable tale of heroism that most people have never heard. It's the story of a man whose quick thinking in a moment of absolute chaos saved hundreds from a terrible fate. His name was Louis C.P. Hennessy, and he was a railroad telegraph operator. As the year 1900 began, Galveston was a booming port city, often called the Wall Street of the Southwest. Its future seemed incredibly bright, but on September 8th, that bright future was plunged into darkness. A Category 4 hurricane, with winds topping 145 miles per hour, made a direct hit on the island city. Weather forecasting back then was primitive compared to today. While there were warnings of a storm in the Gulf, no one could predict its true, catastrophic power. The city's highest point was less than 9 feet above sea level, making it terrifyingly vulnerable to the storm surge. As the afternoon wore on, the situation turned from bad to apocalyptic. The wind screamed like a freight train, and the sea began to swallow the land. Buildings were ripped from their foundations and turned into battering rams by the churning floodwaters amid this pandemonium. At the Galveston train station, people were desperately trying to flee. A passenger train was filled, ready to depart the island for the mainland, carrying hundreds of souls hoping to escape the storm's wrath. They believed the rails were their ticket to safety. They were wrong. This is where our hero, Louis Hennessy, enters the story. He was on duty, his fingers flying across the telegraph key, the vital link between Galveston and the outside world. But as the storm intensified, the messages coming down the line grew more and more alarming. Reports from stations further up the coast described rapidly rising water and tracks that were beginning to disappear beneath the waves. Hennessy pieced together the terrifying truth. The storm surge was far worse than anyone anticipated. The tracks the evacuation train was about to travel over were likely already compromised or would be submerged any minute. The communication lines were starting to fail, crackling with static before going silent one by one. Time was literally running out. Hennessy knew he had to act fast. He began frantically sending out urgent warnings to halt all trains heading both to and from the island. He alerted the crew of the passenger train waiting at his own station, insisting they could not leave. Imagine the pressure, in an era without Doppler radar or instant alerts. His judgment was all that stood between those passengers and certain disaster. If that train had departed, it would have driven straight into a watery grave, the tracks giving way, trapping everyone aboard in the raging flood. Thanks to Hennessy's decisive action, several trains were stopped just in the nick of time. The passengers were taken off the trains and guided to shelter in the strongest nearby buildings, like the city's courthouse and the railroad zone offices. They were still in the heart of a deadly storm, but they were on solid ground, not on a doomed train. Over the next several hours, the hurricane would unleash its full fury, claiming between 6,000 and 12,000 lives. It remains a staggering loss. But because of one vigilant telegraph operator, that number wasn't higher. Louis Hennessy never sought fame or recognition for what he did. His story was just a footnote in the massive tragedy of the Galveston hurricane. He wasn't a general or a politician. He was an ordinary person doing his job under extraordinary circumstances. His story is a powerful reminder that heroism isn't always about grand gestures on a battlefield. Sometimes, it's about paying attention, thinking clearly under pressure, and having the courage to make a difficult call when it matters most. It's about the quiet, unsung heroes who, in a single moment, change the course of history for the people they save. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this story as inspiring as I did, please hit that like button and subscribe for more tallies of forgotten history. See you next time.